What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Will and Rock podcast. My name is Will.
I'm Rock.
And today we're going to discuss, we're going to start with YouTube questions, and then we're going to go directly to UFC 215, and whoever loses the bout is going to be taking a shot. So let's get straight to the YouTube questions.
Shots.
Yes, sir. The first question we have, the only question we have is, what is next for Jose Aldo?
Oh, jeez, man. That's such a tough one. After he came back from back-to-back losses, the way he lost to McGregor, then he comes back, gets that belt, that interim belt, technically, fights Max Holloway, and then gets knocked out again. Honestly, for Jose Aldo, I know there's rumors out there that Ricardo Lamas is the next guy up in line for him, right?
Well, yeah, it's either Cub Swanson or Ricardo Lamas. Most likely, everybody's like pushing over to Ricardo Lamas, so it's a bigger possibility that's going to happen.
Well, I think what's great about a fight like Ricardo Lamas is that, let's say Ricardo Lamas is able to pull off a big victory, that puts him right where he wants to be.
Well, that goes for technically both fighters, because although Jose Aldo just lost to Max Holloway,
and it also depends how Jose Aldo wins that fight, if he ends up winning that fight.
Well,
think about it. If he just got knocked out back to back, what about if he ends up going into decision? Depending on how that fight goes, and he goes into decision, do you really want to see Jose Aldo again?
Well, Jose Aldo, he's knocked out a couple of people, but even in the decision fights, like for example with Uriah Faber, you could tell the complete dominance how he was breaking it down. It was a masterpiece. So,
like I said, it all depends on how he wins this fight.
I don't think that's completely true. You're not going to deny the guy a win, whether he wins. I highly doubt it between these two fighters. It's going to get really close. I really have the advantage of Jose Aldo. The way he's been fighting of late, you're probably doubting that situation, but I still believe that Jose Aldo comes out victorious in that fight. Maybe not by knockout, because it's going to be hard to knock out a guy like Ricardo Lamas, but definitely a clean decision by points.
Also, you got to think about it from his mentality. Like he hasn't really taken a lot of losses in his career. He just came back from back-to-back big-time losses. There's another thing going around saying, I don't even know how many fights he has left in his contract, actually. And he doesn't have many. Right. And he's talked about giving it up, like hanging up the gloves, Does he really still have the passion when you start thinking like that? As soon as you start thinking or going towards the other side, you know what? He's like contemplating retirement. That's not, you don't usually come back from that.
But you know what? This is interesting you said that, because at first he started to talk about soccer. He wanted to become a professional soccer player. And then he decided that he wanted to go into boxing. At the end of the day, boxing is still considered a combat sport. So when you're thinking about still being a striker or anything in the realm possibilities of becoming a combat fighter, even if he does retire with the UFC, you're still looking at, I don't look at that as like, this is my way out of the UFC. I just look at it as this is another opportunity. If we're talking about soccer, then it's a sport that is very little in contact. So with that being said, then the mentality is no longer there. Does that kind of make sense?
No. I see what you're saying, but at the end of the day, you got a contract to fulfill, and you got to work at it. It's going to be very interesting what he ends up doing.
Right.
Does he fight Ricardo Lamas, which I think at this point he really doesn't have much say in who he wants to fight, especially after coming back from back-to-back losses. Either way, I would say that seeing him come back, it's great for the sport. Seeing him take a huge win is great for the sport, because when he was in his prime, everybody wanted to see him fight. And if he goes back on that ramp and starts knocking people off that rank in that weight class, goes back to that championship level, like the UFC desperately needs a superstar, and Jose Aldo could be that with a good victory over Ricardo Lamas.
Alright, so that's how
let's get into the predictions, bro, because this is getting a little bit hot over here.
So last week we discussed, we were discussing UFC 215. We said if Rocky picks the winning fighter, I was going to take a shot and vice versa. So let's just get straight to it. UFC 215 happened. The first bout was Jeremy Stephens versus Gilbert Melendez. You picked Jeremy Stephens. I picked Gilbert Melendez. And I took the first L.
Let's take this L.
I haven't taken a shot in such a long time.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Generous shot. So this is the first shot. Stupid ass Gilbert Melendez.
All right, next fight, Will.
It's not fun. The next fight is Pedro versus Latifi. You picked Pedro because he was an undefeated fighter, and the honest truth is that aftertaste is horrible. The honest truth is that I felt like, damn, when I left that day, because I picked Latifi, I said to myself, fuck, I picked the wrong guy because Pedro's coming out like
Guns blazing,
right.
yeah.
But good thing I stuck to it. Latifi did beat Pedro, so it's your turn, buddy.
Oh, great. Shot for shot, son. Shot for shot. Let's go. All right, everybody.
All right.
Cheers. Next fight.
How was that?
Beautiful.
All right. The next one is Magny versus Dos Anjos.
Fuck my life. God damn Magny, man. But I will say, obviously Dos Anjos won that fight. Rafael Dos Anjos is the real deal, man.
Man, he's very underrated. He does one of the best training camps. He always has the best training camps. I did not see Magny winning unless that fight went to the floor, but then I stopped and I thought about it and I said, even if that fight goes to the floor, Rafael Dos Anjos might have it.
I didn't even, so it's funny you say, okay, I didn't necessarily care if they hit the ground. One of the things that I must say that I really wanted to see is how is Magny going to control his range. Magny's lankier and he's taller.
Right.
So I thought keeping the distance from someone like Dos Anjos was going to get him the victory. And he obviously, and you know what, this fight to me at least looked like, and I won't necessarily call Magny an amateur because he's far from it, but it almost looked like the student and the teacher. This is how good Dos Anjos.
I was going to say that. And Magny's a world-class fighter. I mean, this is a guy that beat Hendricks before.
Oh, yeah.
He's beat, he knocked out,
Who we talking about? We're talking about Magny or?
We're talking about Magny. Because you're saying, that's how dominant,
Yeah, Dos Anjos
looked, right. Magny's coming off a 3-win victory. The last 2 fights he fought. What is the Cuban fighter, the judo dude? Hector. He knocked out Hector Lombard. He won over Johnny Hendricks, the best of the best. I mean, one of the two, the best of the best. With that being said, it's to show you how good Dos Anjos is versus a world class fighter. This is a former champion, so
yeah.
And we have the kid from Philly,
Eddie Alvarez.
Eddie Alvarez. So he beat Eddie Alvarez, took the title from him, and he was going on a good streak. Anyways, let's get right to it. Magny lost. Dos Anjos won. I picked Dos Anjos. Rocky picked Magny, and here's another one, my brother.
Cheers.
Enjoy.
Alright, next.
So there was 2 more fights left. Unfortunately, the fight between Demetrius Johnson and Borg. Chris Borg. Yeah, that got Chris Borg something happened to him like 3 days before the fight or 2 days before the fight. He wasn't able to compete. So they just completely scrapped that fight, and that is actually going into another UFC event, which they haven't called just yet. But with that being said,
hold on a second. Isn't that the New York fight? There's three belts in the New York fight, isn't there?
Yeah, I don't think
GSP, Michael Bisping,
and no, that's TJ Dillashaw and Gambrat. I don't think they're no Chris Borg. Oh no, the new one, Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee. That's who it was. And which, by the way, Kevin Lee and Ferguson are headlining that card. And
in New York?
No, this is not in New York. Versus Demetrius Johnson and
got it.
Demetrius Johnson and Chris Cyborg.
Chris Cyborg? Chris Borg?
Chris Borg and Demetrius Johnson. They're not headlining it.
And that's a huge thing.
Yeah,
it's so bad. that's such huge disrespect for someone like Mighty Mouse.
It is. I agree.
Huge disrespect.
I
man.
agree, especially when he's going to make UFC history with 13 wins, holding the title. So it's kind of depressing. But anyways, the fight that actually happened was Valentina Shevchenko versus Amanda Nunes. I originally was going for Nunes. Right? I was like, I'm going to go for Nunes. I'm going to go for Nunes.
You continue talking while I pour this in.
Son of a bitch. But what happened was, you picked her first. So just to challenge you, just because of I wanted you to or me to take a shot, I decided, you know what? Let me pick the opposite person from you. You won. I lost.
Here we go.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right.
So
pretty much summed it up, right? Yeah, we did the predictions. We took the shots that we said we were going to take from the last episode.
So going forward, we're gonna do. So we do normally one podcast a week. We had something to take care of, so we skipped a week. But with that being said, going forward, we're gonna start decisions on one podcast. We're gonna write them down. Next week we're gonna come back and we're just gonna whoever loses the decision is gonna start taking shots. So
let's get it.
Yes, sir. Follow us on YouTube, the Will and Rock Podcast. Follow us on Instagram on the Will and Rock Podcast. We'll catch you next week. Peace.
Peace, fellas.